As a journalist, as well as a motorcycle enthusiast, I am privileged to inhabit the contact patch between brand projection and brand behavior. And, as is often the case, the official stance of a publicly traded industrial conglomerate might be enhanced or subverted by the frontline staff employed to manage press relations. By and large, anyone working in motorcycles is here for the passion because, from track owners to race series owners to manufacturers to dealers, the profits are few and far between. And then there is KTM. KTM was a small regional manufacturer when Stefan Pierre, a financial engineer, bought KTM out of bankruptcy and joined the board in 1992 and began to grow the small shop into a global conglomerate with clever financial engineering, intra-company organization, and both vertical, buying suppliers, and horizontal, buying competitors, integration, all while constructing massive new production facilities in Austria, international supply lines, partnerships, co-sponsorships of race teams with fellow Australian, the Red Bull founder. Personally, visiting their manufacturing hub in Mexico in 2023, I was deeply impressed by its massive footprint, as well as the bustling activity of robots and Austrians assembling suspensions, stamping exhausts, and bending up frames. In 2025, the KTM MotoGP bike became the fastest race bike ever built, and with upcoming rule changes, that record might stand for a long time. Another Austrian, Friedrich Hayek, had he still been alive and watching the sales projections, price inflation, and production investments of two-wheeled machines during the pandemic, probably would have said something about governments artificially keeping interest rates low to fuel economic activity, creates malinvestments in the private sector, but ultimately needs to be unwound, or 2021 to 2022, bike sales are a bubble, beware. KTM famously defaulted on bondholders and was saved from dissolution by Indian firm Bajaj Auto. I have much empathy for the many small businesses and employees of KTM that were adversely affected by the over-leveraged choices of KTM's executives, and it also might be the most audacious racing move in history to take $2 billion of investor money and YOLO it on worldwide racing. And this ethos permeates the company. Understandably, most manufacturers do not want journalists to get hurt or to crash motorcycles at press launches. This usually results in reminders at the riders' meeting to stay spaced out for photography and it's not a race, etc. But in 2015, KTM invited me to an undescribed racing event at a small track near Modena, Italy, with a note saying, "Bring track gear." That turned out to be a one-off event where the assembled journalists from around the world were kept in the dark about the master plan, which is that we were going to qualify on RC390s, were paired off with a partner for a short team sprint endurance race, like green flag bar-to-bar racing, and winning that event bestowed upon your correspondent a KTM World Championship and also gave me a bit of an impression that KTM is unique in their approach to press events. I arrived at the 990 RCR launch with some preconceptions, but the bike and the brand experience exceeded my already elevated expectation for exuberance. I landed in Spain and noticed how the air quality in Seville was much improved over the last time I had visited the city, and then I realized that this is a tension point in my moto philosophy. On the one hand, all the cities in Europe, only 20 years ago, had a thick miasma of greasy air from the swarms of two-stroke scooters and dirty diesel cars. Now the air is only sullied by cigarette smoke. That is all because the Brussels EU emission bureaucrats kept ratcheting down emission and noise standards. So while a day spent in Manila or Jakarta will quickly remind this petrol head of how much nicer cities are with modern emissions controls, I am torn because Euro 5 and Euro 5 Plus sure have sucked some of the joy out of new street-legal motorcycles. I used to be entranced by cam overlaps and the magic of resonance tuning for intake tracks, but now the engineers have to focus on reducing hydrocarbons, goodbye cam overlap, and reducing production costs, hello parallel twins. On the other hand, the air quality in Europe is way better than in the Philippines. This is all to say, new model introductions used to focus on injector angle, valve size, overlap, piston speed, case porting, and material improvements. The 990 has all that stuff, but it just isn't as important because, as a rider, I hardly ever think when I dip the throttle to power lift out of a turn, man, my hydrocarbon footprint is really reduced on this baby. The 990 RCR is primarily a road-going street bike, but it can double for track day duty. This bike is not for racing, particularly once you learn that there's a track-only version coming in February of 2026. The best street bike rides involve crazy cool back roads up creek drainages, no cars, occasional farm equipment, no law enforcement, and a mix of road surfaces from gravel to billiard table. Mix in a good group of like-minded companions and some sunshine, and I'll chop that shit up and inject it straight into my vein. On our street rides, I am often tasked with finding the small, interesting roads and, much more problematically, navigating them. Enter the digital experience of the 990's dashboard. It is a huge touchscreen with optional toggle controls on the left-hand bar with a street mode display as well as a track display. But rather than being designed by phone geeks who don't ride, this one was designed by ardent motorcyclists. The display windows, like how big do you want the map, the skier, the speedo, RPM, etc., can be customized and set by the user using the touchscreen. The offline maps can be pre-programmed with the touchscreen using waypoints to keep you off the highway, and then you disable the touchscreen and just enjoy the ride while glancing down at the maps once in a while. Since my riding companions on this day included 2 Pikes Peak record holders and a top Moto America Supersport racer, and we were going balls out on extremely twisty Spanish mountain roads, I had no time or attention for messing with dash displays and was very grateful for the information displayed without a lot of distracting clutter. But the dashboard is more than just a pretty display, because this Supersport bike has full Superbike electronics, complete with traction control, wheelie control, including a very KTM high mode as well as off, electronic throttle valve modes, power modes, and even 4 ABS modes up to allowing disabling the rear ABS. In Supermoto Plus mode, it lets you lock the rear brake, but it limits the side slip to 8 degrees. Electronic throttle butterflies allow the 990 to have auto blip downshifts as well as clutchless upshifts. And often electronic throttle valves are restricted on stock bikes for noise regulations, but the KTM ECU engineers assured me that the 990s go 100% WFO. KTM has characteristically pushed the limits on the EU control of the ECU as far as they can, in the interest of the rider. There was a time when 1000cc twins raced 754s in Superbike series around the world as the pinnacle of production racing. And this 947cc, 130 horsepower, 103 newton meters of torque parallel twin, exactly the same power plant used in the Duke 990, with the airbox intake cleverly routed under the rider's thigh, has a deceptively flat exhaust note. With abundant torque and linear power to redline, the 990 will make short work of double yellow line passes, and the Michelin 2CT DOT tires with the legal minimum of tread voids allow for ECU limited wheelies between turns. I didn't see numbers, but the bike sounds uncharacteristically rambunctious in these days of stringent noise regulations. At the factory, they have built race versions of this engine out to 160 horsepower, and the engineers in attendance were confident that the stock engine is very understressed. Despite the miserly rationing of hydrocarbons, the fueling and throttle behavior was excellent. 6 hours in the seat with clip-ons on rough pavement is a long day, but the 990 was not distractingly uncomfortable. Meaning, the counterbalancers kept my hands from going numb, the adjustable foot pegs with clever sliding mount design in their low position kept my knees from hurting too bad, the firm seat never became tortuous, the ergonomic tank provided all sorts of bulges for knee or elbow support, and the ventilated fairing eliminated rider helmet buffeting and provided fresh airflow. The springs are relatively soft at 0.75 Newton meter front and rear, but the WP suspension, part of Pierre's vertical integration strategy, worked wonderfully and provided plenty of support for hard cornering while also sucking up most of the potholes. The bike feels small and compact, but not cramped the way a pure, track-focused bike might. Saturday was the main event, as they had rented the Seville circuit for our exclusive use. Prepping for the track, the mechanics swapped the shifting from street to GP shift, changed the power maps, TC and wheelie mode to go fast, and swapped out the Michelin street tires for the slick version of the Power Cup 2. The slick is the same construction as the dual compound street tire, but without any tread voids at all. The compound is a wide temperature compound intended for track day use without tire warmers, and the tires worked well, but I ended up going through 3 rears over the course of the day. KTM explained to us that we would have multiple sessions, all the bikes had transponders fitted with the lap times displayed in the pits, and Jonas Folger would be testing the track-only version of the bike during our breaks, and at the end of the day, they were going to grid us up for a 5-lap sprint race. Culturally, this is a whole different orbit than a typical press launch. Ready to race indeed. The track was new to me and is notable for being mostly Euro smooth with a couple of lurking ginormous American-style bumps and having predominantly right-handers, a lot of blind crests, some decreasing radius turns, and an afterthought squiggle of really tight turns at the end of the lap. I was over-eager to learn the track, and given the early hour, I was staring into the sun over a blind crest while trying to stay with the riders who had been at the circuit 2 months prior. As such, I was making all the mistakes. Turning early, braking too late, into the oh shit part of the track, and splitting my attention between trying to look through the turn while keeping one floundering eye on the high side of the bike on the outside curbing. Creeping up on me as I was cresting decreasing radius turn. There's also a 4th gear, knee down, crazy fast hill turn with a huge bump just offline. I was offline, and I thought I was going to finally ride off a bike at a press launch. Given all the mistakes I was throwing at the bike, it was politely confused, but always did what I asked and never got upset. The Brembo front calipers and master cylinder, with an adjustable ratio to change the level of travel versus piston leverage, are top specification, but the pads had a heat profile that was a shade conservative, so the pads were really good at trail braking into a turn, but maybe were giving up a little when burying the nose before a high-speed delta entrance. There were a few times when I was too abrupt getting back on the seat with the throttle open, or the aforementioned enormous bump in turn 4, but each time the bike settled back down on its own. Some of that might be the front wing. The design brief for the bike said, you can put a wing on it, but only if it actually works. And so originally the MotoGP bikes were to limit wheelies to allow more power from the ECU. This bike doesn't really need that, as you have to intentionally wheelie it. But this wing provides 15 kilograms of downforce at 239 kph to enhance stability, which in turn allows for the chassis geometry and weight distribution to be set up for agility. The bike is very agile. On the street it was very nimble, but tracks reveal weakness. Particularly in my sun-blinded and track-lost first session, I was making myriad corrections per turn. Off throttle, on throttle, trail braking, no braking, and the KTM just always did what I wanted with the slightest inputs. The dashboard in track mode has an afterthought engine temp and clock displayed, but mainly it's just gear and RPM. And that flat engine note with the strong top end meant the engine pulled straight to redline, which then hit a very abrupt rev limiter, like throw your helmet into the windshield abrupt. I learned to respect the very noticeable blinking dashboard alerting me to shift before losing drive. Although a street bike, the 990 has a launch mode for race starts. Putting the bike in launch mode allows you to then take 3 launches with a thoughtful countdown telling you how many you have left. Thinking about that afternoon 5-lap race, I practiced 2 race launches leaving the pits. Launch mode, clutch in, shift into first, pin the throttle, slip the clutch pretty quickly, but try to stay out of the wheelie control. In my first attempt, I had failed to anticipate how fast I was going to arrive at the top of first gear, so I hit the rev limiter before I could get the shift to second. On the second start, I got it right. Once out on the track, the transmission could be taken for granted. Clutchless, auto blip, no feedback through the chassis, and no missed shifts. The only thing I noticed was that my shift lever, when I made the shifts, seemed to have a vibration that I haven't noticed on other bikes. The 990 RCR is a sport bike that isn't a race bike pretending to be a road bike. It's actually a pretty sensible, for a sport bike, road bike that can also double as a great track day companion. For those who want a single-purpose track bike, wait until February when the track-only version is available. That one won't be street legal, but will be a much better value than the expense of converting a road bike to track duty. In 2026, KTM is even launching their own 990 Cup Series. It's a 6-round series in Europe that will be held in combination with other race series. And this is intended to be a fun, entry-level racing series with 2 classes, one for the track bike and one for the street bike. Best of all, you sign up with the race series kit and it includes entries for all 6 rounds, plus a race suspension kit, complete spare wheels, and 6 sets of slicks, all for €7,500. Just the suspension alone is €7,000 by itself. You can buy the bike, and KTM is working on being able to service and transport it for you from race to race. The 990 comes with a 4-year warranty, so someone should go put 100,000 miles on one. And I want to say that I lost all journalistic objectivity at this press launch, and intoxicated with KTM's YOLO ethos, upon arriving home, I purchased a 2025 KTM 350 EXF for enduro racing in 2026. I think somebody lost a camera or something, and then I hit it.
You did? Are you okay?
Yeah, but I hit it and
Oh no!
Like I was like, what was that? I mean, it was all so fast, you know. But apparently Nick was right behind me, and I shrapneled him, so he